Welcome. I am Larissa Huff. I am the Communications and Program Specialist at the Wharton Esherick Museum. Welcome to our virtual space. We're happy to have you during this lunchtime chat. We're going to ask that you stay on mute during the presentation unless Maria invites you to unmute and answer questions and join a conversation. And you can put any questions you have in the chat or save them for the end, and then we can unmute at the end and have a little bit of a Q&A. Other than that, because we only have 20 minutes, I won't hold us up. We are celebrating the 50th year at the museum, and the current exhibition we have 5 more days of, which is Home is Self, which is all about self-portraiture, which ties directly into what Maria is going to talk to us about today, which is the Coat Peg portraits. So without further ado, I will hand it over to you, Maria.
Thank you, Larissa, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome again to the August Spotlight Talk. Again, my name is Maria, and I am so proud to volunteer here at the Wharton Esherick Museum. I've been involved with the museum since 2014. Volunteering at WEM is really fun, and it's a really great experience. So apologies for the shameless plug, but I felt like I had to get that in there. If you think you might be interested in volunteering, please email Sophie at sophie@whartonesherickmuseum.org. I'm sure she'd love to hear from you. Okay, so sorry, I had to get that out of the way. We're here today to talk about Esherick's coat pegs. They are this friendly cast of familiar characters that greet guests when they enter the museum. Just inside what is considered the front door, it actually looks more to us like the back door. I'll explain more about what I mean in just a minute. So just to give you a little overview of today's program on this screen here, I want to start today by talking about our source of inspiration. Namely our annual woodworking exhibition, Home as Self. We'll take an overview of the coat pegs and we'll learn the story behind them. And then we'll talk about some specific coat pegs, including Wharton's self-portrait, of course. And then we'll wrap up with some suggestions for further reading and a little food for thought. And then, as Larissa mentioned, I want to open it up to comments and questions and have a conversation. So let's get started with Home as Self. This is the title of our annual woodworking exhibition this year. And the text of this slide I lifted directly off of our website, and I just wanted to read it to you. It says, in 1994, the annual juried woodworking exhibition at the Wharton Esherick Museum began as an opportunity to encourage new, creative, and imaginative works in wood. Encouraged to think like Esherick, over the years, professional woodworkers, artists, designers, hobbyists, and craftspeople have submitted hundreds of pieces reflecting each year's theme. For the 28th year of this exhibition, WEM invited applicants to share innovative works of art, craft, and design to represent a self-portrait. So in other words, we chose the coat pegs for our spotlight talk this month because they contain a self-portrait, and that coincides with the end of our annual juried woodworking exhibition. Every year, we invite makers from all over to submit their work based around a certain theme for that year. This year, for our 50th anniversary celebration, it is Home as Self. So home as your self-portrait. Wharton's home was truly his self-portrait, but he also captured his self-portrait in a bunch of unique and interesting ways that are scattered throughout the studio, and we're here today to talk about just one of those. This entire exhibition is virtual. You can see it on our website. And then the work of the top 3 prize winners are on view in the visitor center at the museum for, I believe, just a few more days. Correct me if I'm wrong, Larissa. So please go check it out if you're in the neighborhood. It's really something to see. Again, as we don't have too much time today, I thought I'd give you a look at just the first and second place prize winners, just so you can get an idea of how wonderful this show is. In first place, we have Virginia Blanchard's Like the Virgin. And in second place, we have Katie Hundel's Chair. Both of these women appear in the museum's Creatives on Esherick series, which is a virtual series viewable on the website or the museum's YouTube page. So we'll link you to that. And again, you can see the winners in person in the visitor center or of the Wharton Esherick Museum, or you can see the full show online at the museum's website, and we'll give you a link to that at the end. But for now, I wanted to get back to the stars of the show today, the coat pegs. I want to talk a little bit about who they are and where they came from. To understand that, you kind of have to understand a little bit about the story of the construction of the studio. The first phase of the studio, which is pictured here in its entirety, now known as the Wharton Esherick Museum, of course, was completed in 1926. So for context, and just for added color, the final edition, that colorful silo on the right there, wasn't completed for another 40 years, and not until 1966. On the issue of self-portraiture, it's worth mentioning here that the building itself has really been referred to as Esherick's self-portrait. It is his autobiography, with each segment of the studio reflecting where he was in his career, style, and influence-wise. So the stone portion was first, of course, and again completed in 1926. 1926 is the same year as the coat pegs. So what does one have to do with the other? Well, now on a normal tour, when I'm talking about the architecture, a lot of people ask me, did Esherick do all of this by himself? And of course, the answer to that is no. He needed some help. So he had the help of a crew. And that's where these coat pegs come in. Each one is a tiny sculpture. I'll give you a closer look. Of a different crew member who worked with Wharton to help him build the studio. And we'll meet each individual character in just a moment. First, to give you a sense of where we find these, so you can look out for them on your next tour, I wanted to share with you this concept drawing, which is viewable on the museum website from the architectural firm of Atkin Olson Shade, who have really masterfully aided us with a large campus expansion project, joining the lower campus down here with the upper campus up here. So about 100 years ago, Esherick would leave his farmhouse. That's this yellow building on the bottom right, or bottom left, excuse me. This would be a new building. This isn't there now, so it wouldn't have been there 100 years ago. So he'd leave his farmhouse and he'd walk up the hill here to his studio. There's a door there. And just inside that door on the wall is where you find the coat pegs. Now, when you come for a tour, you'll probably come in back here. So that's why, although it is Esherick's front door, it sort of looks like the back door because we have to walk around the building to get there. Going back to the studio and the coat pegs, it was really important to me to include this quote that you see here on this slide. If it's not fun, it's not worth doing. If nothing else, to me, these coat pegs really convey this great sense of humor, as does so much of his work. So definitely keep that in mind as we take a closer look at each individual one. One more point I wanted to make in introducing the coat pegs. They are, again, such a really fun example of the playful way in which Wharton captures his own portrait and the portraits of others. They are also a great example of how seamlessly he marries form and function. I was leading a tour a few years ago. It was just myself and a couple of woodworkers. And they were really fascinated with these, and they were getting up really close to them and examining them and getting out their cameras so they could zoom in even more. And one gentleman turned around to me and he said, you know, you can tell these weren't just meant for decoration. These were meant to be used and have been used. And I said, oh my gosh, absolutely. You just captured Wharton's career in a nutshell. That is so important to understanding everything he does. He had another saying that went, furniture as sculpture, sculpture as furniture. According to him, furniture and sculpture are supposed to be the same thing. Furniture is not supposed to need decoration because it's supposed to double as the decoration. All right, so now let's get to it. I wanted to take a closer look at each coat peg and meet the characters that inspired them. So we'll start with Wharton, of course. He places himself up top, overseeing the crew with his hammer and chisel. He is carved in oak. And I want you to take a moment just to consider your first impressions about how he portrays himself. You can share those in the chat or share, I'd love to hear them at the end. What do you think he's trying to convey here? Some of my first impressions, he looks so effortless, just a few strokes. I see more of that great sense of humor and fun. I love the movement that he captures here, which is another signature throughout so much of his work. That line created by his arm overhead gives me such a great sense of movement. I think, again, he had such a great sense of humor, but the fact that he places himself kind of above everyone else, he looks very strong and powerful, just to me speaks to just how seriously he took his work and what he did. Moving on, I wanted to introduce you to who is arguably the second most important character for you to meet today. His name is Mr. John Schmidt. Schmidt was a neighbor of Wharton's and, as luck would have it, a master carpenter fresh off an apprenticeship at a German trade school that his brother ran, which was at the time a coveted position. He happened to come back to Paoli to live with his sister and just kind of happened to bump into Wharton. It's amazing how often throughout his personal life and his career, we have these serendipitous events like that. So the two men struck up what would end up being a 30-year partnership, with Esherick making use of Schmidt's barn workshop and Schmidt teaching Wharton just so much about the more complex points of joinery, cabinetry, furniture making as a whole. They worked primarily out of Schmidt's barn studio on nearby Jug Hollow Road for any locals who might be familiar with the area. And again, just taking a moment to appreciate the detail that Wharton includes here. I love how he gives him his cap. And he even, I don't know if you can see it in this picture, but he even puts teeth on his saw on the underside. That's a detail we didn't know about until a few years ago. We didn't notice it. We have Albert Culp, the stonemason. Now, if you've been to the museum for a tour, you've probably heard a funny story about a little kind of back and forth between Culp and Esherick when they were constructing the original stone portion of the studio in the mid-1920s. So I'm not going to spoil that for you. But long story short, Culp wanted to fill the mortar between the stones flush with the face of the stone, while Esherick wanted that local sandstone to be on display. In an unpublished essay, Esherick explained his position by saying that Culp's way was, quote, not as I thought it should be in a wild wood, high in the hill near the clouds. He went on to say that, quote, the wall should not be so regular, which I just love. You can call Esherick a lot of things, but I don't think regular is one of those. So look at how Wharton depicts him here. He's got his derby and he's setting a stone. The final two are pretty mysterious. We couldn't even find photos of them, unfortunately. We have Aaron Coleman. He was what was called a hod carrier, someone who would have hauled bricks and mortar for the mason. So that was Albert Culp. Again, not many details, but get a closer look there. He does have mortar in hod here. If you're like me and you didn't know what a hod was, I had to look that up. It's sort of like a box. And let me get back to our main. This picture, not of Mr. Coleman, unfortunately, but other hod carriers from what looks to be kind of a similar time period, courtesy of the Library Company of Philadelphia. Larry Hand was another laborer. I believe his job was to operate the wheelbarrow, so I can't say I envy him there. Apparently he was a rather large man, so the detail that you're looking at here is actually his gut. My personal favorite of all these is this one. This is the bird who sang to them as they worked. Even he gets his own coat peg. I just think he's really cute. And another important thing to understanding Esherick and his work is this deep love of nature that really permeates throughout. Yes, there's plenty of natural imagery like this, but he's also known for, again, natural curving lines, natural shapes, kind of more rough-hewn forms. So I think that's another important point to his work. That's all I had for you today. But there are so many ways that you can find out more, so I wanted to share just a few of those with you. I do really encourage you to check out our website. I'm sure there will be links to most, if not all of this stuff in your follow-up email, but I was excited, so I wanted to get you started on it now. On our website, you will find our blog with just a ton of amazing stories and archival photos. Recently, the staff did a blog called Exploring Self-Portraits, so I recommend starting with that after today. As many of you probably know or may know, we do these spotlight talks every month. And last month, the talk was on Esherick's self-portrait, which is a painting. So if you haven't already, I definitely recommend checking that out. Maybe compare and contrast that more traditional self-portrait to this far less traditional one. And again, please check out the Full Home as Self exhibition or come see the winners in person at the museum while you still can if you're local. And hopefully you can join us for a tour while you're there. So I wanted to try something a little new. I thought I'd leave you with a question. And it's something that I hope that you'll answer when we open it up for comments, and maybe you can put it in the chat or just kind of answer for yourself. I wonder what you might do if you were going to create a functional self-portrait. The picture I chose here is not exactly a self-portrait, but a portrait within a spoon that he made for his daughter. And I chose it for this slide because I think that's what I would do. Maybe some sort of kitchen utensil. I love food and cooking, maybe knitting needles because I'm a knitter. So what about you? I'd love to hear what you would do. That's all for me. I'm going to toss it back to Larissa. And thank you all again for joining me today. And we'll be opening it up for comments and questions.
That was so great. Thank you, Maria. We did have one question, which I don't know if we know the answer to, but do we know if the characters that were carved as the coat pegs knew that these coat pegs were made and installed?
That is a good question.
Yeah, I'm not sure I know the answer to that.
I don't know the answer to it either. I would imagine so, just because he had so many people around. I would imagine they would have been around the studio after it was constructed, but I can't say for sure.
Yeah, maybe Holly knows. I don't know if Holly's out there, but she might know the answer to that. Yeah, other than that, Chuck says he would also carve a spoon as
Nice.
a self-portrait.
Nothing more practical than that.
Yeah. I like the idea of a mirror. Might be a little too literal, but carving yourself into a mirror, the way you see yourself versus the way it's reflected back. I don't know.
That's first place in the show, right?
That's true. That is true.
Ooh, a bookcase. I like that.
Yeah. Bookcase. Good one. Chair. Chair is a good one too.
Yes.
Anybody has any thoughts or questions and they want to unmute and join the verbal conversation, you're welcome to do so. Potter, so a cup or a bowl, it's a good one. I like the range of craft we've gotten here.
Yes, yeah. Go out and make some of these now.
Yeah, right.
Are there any more of these pegs or this kind of stuff in the house that's carved like that in sort of representational fashion?
There are definitely sculptural portraits, definitely in this style. I can't speak to any other coat pegs though. I have never seen any like this.
Yeah, there's a few busts, like there's a bust of Mary, I think. Yeah, there's a lot of representation of the people in his lives, but I think these might be the only coat pegs.
There's a Buck Fever, his tribute to his friend Sherwood Anderson. The image of Buck Fever.
Oh,
Definitely, yeah. Lots of sculptural portraits.
Well, Wharton doesn't seem to be much of a self-editor. I love that little fat gut. That's just hilarious. And I'm kind of going, you don't want that his lamp turned on you. It doesn't seem like.
Bob Bascom described that to me as that's his beer belly hanging out over the wheelbarrow.
I wonder how Larry Hand felt about that.
I'm curious about something. Have any of the pegs ever come out of the wall?
Oh, that's a good question. Not to my knowledge. I'll invite the staff to jump in.
yeah, I have not heard of them coming out of the walls at all.
There are photos of them being used. There's, coats and jackets hanging on them. So they were indeed used.
Yeah, I thought that was such a great comment.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
As is the Wharton way. You got to use the things you make.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So do we physically know how they were in the wall? Because they're on one point, and that's really there's a lot of torque there. So just physically, I don't know if we know anything about that.
I don't know the answer. I've thought about this as a woodworker a lot, trying to analyze. It must go into the wall a fair amount to accept the weight like that. But I don't actually know how it's mounted in there other than just being stuck in the material that makes up the wall. Looks like we got to do some. We're asked how they were installed. We'll have to figure out.
Yes.
Consult
Send that along in the follow-up.
someone who knows better than I do.
Do we know the makeup of the wall? Like, is it like how was the wall in that area constructed?
I can't speak with any certainty to that. I can say it looks to me like it is simple stone and mortar. It gets very cold in there in the cold months. There's not really insulation or anything. I don't know if
So it's a stone wall cover. Okay.
right.
So then I would assume that it was just a hole drilled out in the stone, and then the peg was just inserted in and drilled it, pounded in hard. So
Yeah.
That would certainly be my guess.
Yeah. Well, I've never analyzed the makeup of the walls quite as much as this today. This is exciting. Great. We don't have any more questions. This has been a great conversation, guys. Thank you for participating. And thank you, Maria, for sharing all of your knowledge. We have 2 upcoming events. The first one is the shift in our exhibition. So we have 5 more days of Home as Self. And then we're going to shift into Home as Stage, which is a handful of contemporary artists installing things that they've made in the actual studio. And it will be very exciting. And that will be our last exhibition in celebrating the 50-year anniversary. But the extra exciting thing is our upcoming anniversary day of events. So on October 9th, we are hosting a Song Well Sung celebrating 50 years at the Wharton Esherick Museum. And we will have an open house during the day. The artists who have installed pieces for the Home as Stage will be there, telling you all about how they created their pieces and why. There'll be snacks and activities. And then in the evening, there'll be a dinner hosted in the 1956 workshop. Both of these events require reservations and tickets, so check out our website if you want to come to that. It will be super fun. And other than that, keep your eye out for our next Spotlight Talk. Will come sometime in September. We'll have a blog post up soon. And yeah, stay in touch. And we hope to see you at the next virtual event. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you. Well
Thank
done.
you.
Thank you.